Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Afterlife of Holly Chase. And the last time we met together, we left off on chapter 9, where Holly had did something that was totally forbidden that she was not supposed to do when she started to talk to Ethan as a real person. So let's get back into it and see how this continues. Chapter 10. He's out for the night, Grant announced. Proceed, Miss Havisham. Roughly 30 hours had gone by since I met Ethan in real life. I was back at work like it was a perfectly normal night shift at the office. Like yesterday at the pool had never happened, but it had. It shouldn't have happened. I've been telling myself for like the past 29 hours. It can never happen again. But it'd been fun while it lasted. It was the word for it. Fun. It'd been so fun to talk to Ethan. More fun than I had in years. Working more on the fan this time. Right, Holly? Grant said in my ear as I walked through the first part of the sifting process. Right. But truthfully, I didn't have any desire to look into the death of Ethan's dad tonight. I wanted to see Ethan again. Not that broken-hearted little boy he'd become after his dad died. Besides, I had already had enough fan material to work with on Christmas. Normally, in this situation, I might get a jump on next month's assignment, the Fizzwig. The Fezziwig love parties, so that could be a little more lighthearted, work-wise, but I wasn't really feeling that either. What I wanted, under everything, was to go back to that pool and talk to Ethan some more, which I couldn't do, ever again. I sighed again. Wait, or maybe I could. It suddenly occurred to me that I could go back to the pool with Ethan because he had a memory of me now. I could relive it, at least. It took me all of 2 seconds to find it once I was back in Ethan's mind. The pool. The girl sitting by the pool. It was so bizarre seeing myself through someone else's eyes, like watching a home movie I hadn't been aware was being shot. That blonde girl reading a newspaper by the pool, unbelievably crazy as it seemed, she was me. Ethan had seen her the minute she came into the room. He'd waited for her to shimmy out of her jeans and reveal a bathing suit, but instead she sat down on the chase next to where he stashed his towel. Then she stole his copy of New York Times. He considered right then that maybe he'd talk to her. It wasn't every day that a girl like that came into the club. Not a beautiful girl like that. I'm serious. That was literally what he thought. I sucked in an excited breath. I suddenly realized I was doing what every single girl in the history of the human race would have killed to do right after meeting a cute guy. I was looking inside his mind and finding out exactly what he'd been thinking about at the time. So far, it was awesome. I couldn't wait to see the rest. Ethan watched as the first man from the club hit on the girl. Do you have a good lawyer? God, that was hilarious. He'd had to turn his face in the other direction in the pool so he could laugh quietly in the water. She had an evil side, this girl. He could appreciate that. Then she said she was 17. It just so happened that Ethan was 17, which felt to Ethan like a happy coincidence. Again, he debated talking to her. He knew how to talk to women, or at least he thought he knew. Girls didn't intimidate him, even beautiful girls, but he didn't really seek them out for conversation. Still, a girl like that with her legs stretched out for miles might be worth a few minutes of his attention. He planned his approach as he took his final lap in the pool. He'd point out that the newspaper in her hands was technically his property. No, she might get defensive. He'd ask about what article she was reading. No, it seemed like he was trying too hard. He didn't want her to think he was trying at all. He'd ask her what time it was. No, because there was a giant clock right above her head. He looked like a moron. He'd compliment her shoes. Yes, girls love when you notice their shoes. He was pulling himself out of the water when he heard another guy say, "Hello, sweet thing. I like your shoes." Ethan cursed under his breath. And who went up to a girl and called her sweet thing like that? Tool. I totally agreed. Not interested, replied the girl with an annoyed edge to her voice. Ethan walked over to retrieve his towel. She kept reading. He took advantage of the closer proximity to get a better look at her. Nice. Even nicer up close. But a girl like that had a boyfriend, he told himself. She didn't want to be bothered. She wasn't interested. So he dried off briskly and turned to head back to the locker room. But then she said, "Wait." He turned. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, her lips parted slightly, and something strange happened inside of Ethan's chest, a little kick of excitement. "Can I ask you a question?" she asked. What was a question, but he didn't point that out. There was something familiar about her voice, like he heard it before, but he knew better than to ask if they'd ever met. He would have remembered a girl like that. She asked him to pretend to be her boyfriend, which was unexpected. This was a no-brainer to Ethan. He played along any day. So they talked, they joked, they flirted back and forth. She was smart, probably smarter than he was, which he found unsettling but cool. She was funny. She was gorgeous. He couldn't imagine a girl he'd find more attractive if he photoshopped her together. Her lively brown eyes were regarding him with open interest. His heart was starting to pound. He never had this kind of reaction to a girl, he thought. What was wrong with him? Or maybe it was something right with her. He felt like he'd known her for years, maybe, but then some part of him also felt like he'd been waiting for her to come along, like he'd been expecting her, and now here she was. There had been a catch. Ethan had learned over the years that no good thing came without a catch, a price. Something. He was probably dreaming, he thought. He'd had the strangest dreams lately, so vivid, and this felt exactly like one of those. Maybe she was a dream girl, and now he'd wake up. She lifted her hand to his face, caressing his cheek, and his nerves lit up like fireworks, the inside of her wrist smelling amazing, like lavender and something sweet, like candy. He kissed her palm, my palm. This was me. He was remembering me. He was lightening up for. How was this actually happening? And she shivered, and goosebumps rose up on the back of her arm. That's when Ethan blew it, or at least he thought so, because he asked her out. She immediately told him she had to go. She wouldn't give him her number. She gave some unbelievable excuse about not having a cell phone. She wouldn't agree to meet him again at any set time. She still wouldn't even tell him her name. She kept saying she'd look for him later, whatever that meant, and she left. After she went, he sat there by the pool kind of stunned, still smelling her perfume, for way longer than he should have. He wondered where exactly he'd gone wrong. She had a boyfriend, he concluded, a real one. Even if she didn't, he wasn't in the mood to get something started with the opposite sex. Girls were too much trouble. They were always demanding that you pay attention to every little thing they say, and they wanted you to hold their hand and buy them things. Yes, they were definitely expensive. They were time-consuming. They were needy. He'd be better off, Ethan decided, if he never saw that girl again. But he still got that excited feeling in his stomach when he pictured her. His hour with the mystery girl had been the most fun he had in a while. He hadn't been bored. He hadn't felt any pressure to be anyone but himself. He'd felt alive, which was something he hadn't felt, he realized, for a really long time. After the shift, I stayed late in my office. I couldn't concentrate well enough to write my stupid report. Plus, I had to make the whole thing up because I couldn't exactly report on where I'd been in Ethan's mind. God, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The thing that got to me most was that he saw me. He really saw me. And though I hadn't even been trying to look good, I'd been wearing no makeup and cheap shoes. He thought I was beautiful. I was more than just a ghost to him. I was a girl like that. It made me want to go back to New York Athletic Club right this minute and talk to him. Prove to him that I wasn't your typical girl, that I hadn't blown him off, that I liked him too, but he wouldn't be there, of course. He was sleeping now. I had to go home, figure some things out. I grabbed the hoodie, put it on, more of the habit than anything else, and headed down the dark hall toward the elevator. I was passing by Bob's office on the way out when I heard the voices, raised voices. Naturally, I stopped to find out what was up. "I don't like it," said a voice. "I never approved of the idea. It's insulting for you to ask us to do this. It's just not how things are done here." I recognized the hard edge of the voice right away. Blackpool. And what a shock. He didn't like something. I never seen Blackpool like anything, ever. But what were they referring to? "It's too late to back out now, my friend," said another voice, and I recognized this one too. "Boss, we're committed. We'll see it through." "And it's going to work," came Dave's voice. "Haven't you seen that, Arthur? Can't you feel it?" "I can." I slid the hood of my hoodie over my head so I'd go invisible. Something about this conversation was making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "I hope you know what you're doing," Blackpool grumbled. "I do," said Boz. "You realize that you're risking everything for this?" Blackpool asked him. "Everything we've done, everything we've accomplished." "But isn't that what we're about here?" Dave interrupted softly. "Every single time we open a portal to a Scrooge's bedroom, aren't we taking risks? That's what we do, Arthur. We risk everything. We put it all on the line." Footsteps approached the door, and I took off as quickly as I could down the hall. It wasn't until I was sitting on the subway again, veering toward home, that my heart finally began to slow. I didn't know what they'd been talking about, but one thing was obvious. Something weird was definitely going on at Project Scrooge. Something weirder than usual, I mean. Something out of the ordinary. But I had my own problems to worry about. I've been telling myself that my afternoon with Ethan had to be a one-time thing, but seeing it through his eyes had changed my mind. I hoped to see him again. The question was, how? Chapter 11. "All right, people, let's get started," Boss said as we all gathered in Conference Room A for the August meeting. "Let's hear more about our infamous Mr. Winters, shall we? Hopefully we're making some progress. Havisham, you go first." "Why do I always have to go first?" I asked. Boss seemed taken aback. "It's the natural order of things to go past, present, and then future, wouldn't you say?" "It's the way we always—" Yes, it's the way we've always done it, so we always have to do it that way." I rolled my eyes. "Can't we just change things up a little? Start with Blackpool for once." Boss frowned, but then he nodded. "Very well. Blackpool, report on Mr. Winters, please." Blackpool gazed at me. I smiled back at him. He glared some more. "I've seen the Scrooge's debt," he intoned finally. "That is all." "Okay. Way to contribute absolutely nothing, Blackpool." I wondered if he was still upset about whatever it was that he and Boz and Dave had been arguing about. All week I noticed a kind of tension in the air between Blackpool and Boz, like they were in a silent but serious argument. "All right, if that's how it is, I won't push you." Boz frowned and turned away from Blackpool. "How about you, Copperfield?" But Dave wasn't ready either. He rustled through his notes like he'd forgotten how to read. "Well," he cleared his throat. Yes, we've got Ethan's schedule down. We understand his patterns fairly well by now. He goes to school, goes to the gym, goes home. He gets a phone call from his mother on Tuesday evenings, plays indoor soccer on Wednesdays, that kind of thing. He goes to the occasional party on Saturday nights, usually with a different girl each time, no one steady. I was trying to subtly take notes on Ethan's schedule. Indoor soccer, Wednesdays, phone call, Tuesday nights, parties, Saturdays. But these were all places the company would be monitoring. All of that useful information about Ethan's life, the exact whens and wheres I was missing, was locked away inside of Dave's office, which I didn't have access to. "No girlfriend," Boss said. "I assume there's a belle lurking around somewhere in his life." "Not one that I've seen," Dave said. "But that's not really my department." They looked at me. I shrugged. "I don't do the belle until October." "True enough," Boss said. "All in due time." The belle was the Scrooge's ex, the long-lost love, the happiness that could have been. I had never seen Ethan goo-goo-eyed with a girl. In all the memory sifts I've done, no girl ever stood out. But then, it didn't necessarily have to be a romantic connection with Belle. My own Belle had been Ro. My throat tightened thinking about Ro all grown up, oblivious and happy with her life. The very definition of the words, alive and well. Last time, Copperfield, you reported that you and your team had identified the Portleys as that homeless man on 6, Boz recalled. Yes, we have. That's all set, Dave said. So this month, have you worked out the details with the Fred? Boz asked. Dave scratched his beard. We've been looking into his sister, Jack. She's family, and that's promising, but she doesn't seem interested in making any connection with her brother at this point. But that could change, I guess. Or it could be the mother, or the maternal grandmother. Both of them invite Ethan to family events fairly regularly. Of course, he never attends, but they keep asking. It sounded like Dave had no idea who the Fred was. I see. Keep watching it, Boz directed. He turned to me again. Are you willing to share with us now, Havisham? Of course, I said. Except I still didn't have anything meaningful to share. I'd been what you might call preoccupied for the past week. I've been trying to figure out how to see Ethan again without anyone at Project Scrooge knowing about it. So far, I totally failed. I couldn't meet him at his apartment or at his school. Dave's team was watching both places practically every second. So I assumed my best option would be to go back to the New York Athletic Club. In fact, I'd already gone back and sat there stupidly by the pool waiting for, hours to see if he would randomly show, but he never did. I just didn't know when Ethan was going to be where. I'd been trying to piece it together from Ethan's memories, but that was also complicated because we don't recall our schedules the same way we remember specific moments in our lives, and we don't exactly go into every memory thinking, oh yeah, this is Tuesday at 10:53 a.m. I sighed. It'd been almost an entire week, and I still hadn't seen him again, but now he'd probably forgotten all about me. And what is it that you have to share? Boz asked. Tell me you have the Fezziwig. I'm close, any day now. I didn't care about Fezziwig. I wasn't remotely close to finding one, but Boz didn't have to know that. Have you learned anything new? He asked. I've learned lots of things. I'd been picking up all kinds of interesting tidbits of information in Ethan's brain while I was trying to figure out his schedule. For instance, his favorite food was spaghetti, but he also liked pizza with mushrooms and olives and green peppers. He brushed his teeth 3 times a day and used mouthwash and flossed. He was like the most kissable boy ever, and he was a Yankees fan. Duh, he liked reality shows. He liked watching soccer and golf, but hey, everybody has flaws. I could get past it. He actually enjoyed shopping for clothes. He liked building his image, piece by piece and item by item. His favorite color was black. Mine too. He was a snob about the coffee he drank. Same. He also liked Pierre. God, it was like we were soulmates. And most important, he liked me, and I liked him. I liked him so much it was kind of killing me. I shook my head. This Fezziwig's a tough one. Look at parties. You know the Fezziwig love parties, Boz advised. I stared at him. Yes, I know. This is not my first rodeo, Boz. It seems that everyone is struggling a bit this month, he said, which, again, made me feel somewhat better. We need to focus, help each other, work together. The meeting dragged on. Boz and Dave started talking about Jack and how she may or may not be the Fred. I was hardly listening at this point. I was still thinking about seeing Ethan again. It felt nearly impossible because he was under such constrained surveillance. There were holes, of course, pockets of time when he wasn't being watched as closely, but I didn't know where and when the pockets occurred, which brought me back to this simple fact. I needed to know what Dave knew, but I couldn't just ask him, and it'd be suspicious if I started poking around in places I didn't normally go. Even the hoodie couldn't help me because I didn't have access to Dave's office. It required a badge swipe and my security clearance wasn't high enough. I sighed. I was out of ideas. "Can I get a coffee?" whispered a voice right into my ear, and I nearly knocked heads with Stephanie. "You look like you need a pick-me-up," she observed quietly. "No thanks," I sighed again. Gosh, she always just so helpful, wasn't she? And then I had an idea. A wonderful, but maybe awful idea. It suddenly occurred to me that if I was going to do this, if I was actually going to pull off seeing Ethan in real life, I need help. Someone inside the company. A person I could get to do things for me so I wouldn't draw attention to myself. Cover for me. Someone to watch my back. Someone who, I just remembered, happened to mysteriously have full security clearance. On second thought, "I do have something you can help me with," I whispered back to Stephanie. "Sure, what is it?" she asked. Bob stopped talking and turned to stare at me pointedly. "Wouldn't you agree, Havisham?" I had no idea what he was asking about. "Yes," I said, "I totally agree." Boz and Dave went back to talking. Later, I whispered to Stephanie, "I'll tell you later." "Okay, I can't wait to hear what it is," she whispered back. "You know I'm always here to help," which was just what I'd been hoping she'd say. All right, everyone, it seems like we've come to the end of chapter 11. Seems like Holly is about to get herself into some major trouble. Y'all come back and join me and let's see what happens. I'll see y'all soon. Bye.